Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video, and today we have a tier list for you guys of ranking UFC fighters who kind of fell off recently in 2025. Right now, I'm not just clowning fighters for losing fights because a lot of fighters, like, they can lose fights and they'll still be beloved by the general fan base. All right, what I'm talking about, however, are the UFC fighters who either had certain iffy performances and all their fans seemed to abandon them, or they had iffy performances and the narrative around that fighter completely shifted in the year of 2025. You'll get the gist of the video as we move along, so without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. All right, first off the list, we got Alex Pereira. Remember the time when Alex Pereira was considered like the best fighter in the UFC or like just the face of the UFC? Man, like after his loss to Magomed Ankalaev, I ain't hear a Shama chant since, right? Like I don't understand what happened to his fan base, but they went dead silent after Magomed Ankalaev won the belt, all right? And it wasn't like Alex Pereira performed like that awful. Like I thought he won like 2 rounds, but it's just the fact that Magomed Ankalaev won and Alex Pereira lost. It seems like all of his fans are like in hiding mode, and I don't think any of his fans are really confident in him winning the next fight. Right? Like Alex Pereira, everyone in terms of mainstream media was picking Alex Pereira to win this fight. Right? But after that first fight, and now they're announcing the rematch for October. Yeah, no one's really picking him, right? Narrative around Alex Pereira has completely shifted, and although he was the coldest fighter in 2024, 2025 hasn't done him very well. And I don't know. I'm just surprised that within a year, the narrative around Alex Pereira has completely shifted. All right. Now, moving on, we got Patchy Mix. All right. Patchy Mix isn't necessarily like a popular fighter, but he was like the hardcore fans fighter before he fought Mario Bautista, right? Before Patchy Mix made his UFC debut, people actually thought that he was like caliber in the bantamweight division. I'd say around top 10ish level. Fast forward after the Mario Bautista fight, the narrative around him has completely changed to where people are considering him a complete bum. I don't blame those guys because, like them, I consider Patchy Mix a complete bum now. All right, Patchy Mix, he has no capabilities of moving on the feet like UFC level, and he hasn't really shown any of his grappling that's won him so many of these fights at Bellator. So at this point, I'm wondering why the UFC is still keeping Patchy Mix. I know that the UFC matched Patchy Mix up with some debuting guy, and that's how you know that you've had a crazy fall off, right? It's when you go from top 10 level opposition to someone who has like never really fought in the UFC. And if Patchy Mix loses that fight, he's 100% getting cut from the promotion because at that point, what do you even do with Patchy Mix? So yeah, Patchy Mix, again, he wasn't all that popular to begin with, but yeah, that fall off after that Mario Bautista fight was really crazy to watch. All right, now up next we got Kevin Holland. Now, Kevin Holland, the only reason I put him this low on this list is because I don't think he's really had that big of a momentum to begin with at the start of 2025 because people were turning on Kevin Holland ever since he lost to Michael Venom Page. And then he got choked out by Rainer de Ritter. And then he started making a little bit of a comeback against Gunnar Nelson, Vicente Luque, and people were actually considering Kevin Holland to be like ranked level in the welterweight division. But then he lost to Daniel Rodriguez in like UFC 318, which was like end of July, early August. I'm not really too sure, but yeah, Kevin Holland, Jesus Christ. Like, I didn't think he would lose to Daniel Rodriguez. And if you're losing to Daniel Rodriguez in 2025, which fair enough, D Rod's on like a crazy win streak, but he's like what, 37, 38 years old. And Kevin Holland, Like people were saying, "Oh, he's locked in now." It's like, "Oh, he can actually make a run to like the top 5 of the welterweight division." Yeah, that ain't happening anytime soon. Like he actually tried against Daniel Rodriguez and still lost. Like that's the I guess concerning part. Like I don't know, you just can't be losing to Daniel Rodriguez and expect to be ranked level. And Kevin Holland lost to Daniel Rodriguez. So that was a very interesting turn of events. And Kevin Holland, although he wasn't rated that highly, I feel like he's fell off ever since he lost to Daniel Rodriguez. All right, now up next we got Zhang Ming Yang, who just came off the loss to Johnny Walker. Now I will say this: he did not look great against Johnny Walker, and the calf kicks are kind of concerning. But the only reason I'm saying that Zhang Mingyan can still make a comeback is because the UFC are heavily invested in the Chinese market, right? They are looking for the next big Chinese prospect, and knowing the UFC, they're gonna try to get Zhang Mingyang back on track as soon as possible, and just build him up as like a decent contender. Like, I don't think he's gonna get into the top 5 or anything, right? Even if he does have like a resurgence. But Zhang Mingyang, he can still make a comeback, right? Again, he's still like capable, right? He's got some nasty hands, and he's like somewhat young into his UFC career, right? He's had a lot of fights outside the UFC, but in terms of like fighting UFC level opposition, he hasn't fought that many to begin with. So I still think Zhang Mingyang, if you give him the right opponent, he can still make a comeback and just be able to, I don't know, have a career resurgence. But then again, losing to Johnny Walker isn't the best, so I'm not expecting that big of a comeback, if you know what I mean. All right, now up next, we got Hamza Chimaev. Now, many people will think that Hamza Chimaev is like one of the faces of the UFC right now. But I'm gonna be real, his last fight against DDP, I think kind of deterred him from capturing like the majority of the fan base. I still think he's relevant. I still think he's one of the most popular fighters on the roster. And I do think that everyone should admit that Hamza Chimaev is a monster. And he's like probably the best middleweight fighter in the division by far. But his last fight against DDP did kind of deter some fans, right? And although I still think he's very popular, I don't think he is going to necessarily like build into a superstar because I don't know. Is he gonna fight anytime soon? Is he gonna come back and have exciting performances like he did in years past? All right. These are questions that people are asking, and I still do think that Hamza Chimaev can become a superstar, but I don't know. It's gonna be kind of hard. But then again, he's still relevant, and I do think that the UFC it's in their best interest to try and promote him. All right, now up next we got Bo Nickel. Right, this NCAA collegiate wrestler that the UFC was trying to market to us as like the next big thing. Yeah, how one fight against Rainer de Ritter massively changes that perspective. All right. The UFC, I think, practically let him go because this guy, after one loss, is now back to wrestling against like not even against the best level of competition. He's just wrestling against like random folks that I haven't really heard from before. And the fall off needs to be studied. All right. Now, to be fair, I think many people who have been watching UFC consistently knew this was coming because I think everyone believed that Bo Nickel was going to get fraud checked at some point. All right. But the way he got fraud checked against Rainer de Ritter, it didn't look all that good. All right. Now, I'm not saying that because Rainer de Ritter is bad. If anything, Rainer de Ritter is elite level opposition. That being said, you cannot be getting crumpled to the body with knees by Rainer de Ritter and expect to be like the next big thing in the UFC. And now that people have watched Bo Nickel get exposed, I don't think Bo Nickel's ever going to come back. And plus, he kind of showed that after one loss, he's just not a MMA fighter anymore. Right? And I don't really think Bo Nickel it was all that good to begin with. I just still somehow picked him against Rainer the Ritter for some reason. Like that was a terrible pick. But yeah, I think most people realize now that Bo Nickel, industry plant, doesn't even belong in like the ranked discussions of the UFC. And yeah, there's just no salvaging Bo Nickel's career at this point when he's like what 30 years old. And yeah, he just had that stinky performance against Rainer the Ritter. All right, now up next we got Bobby Green. All right, I'm not calling him King. And ever since Bobby Green changed his name to King Green, things have not looked all that great for him. All right, he got choked out by Paddy Pimblett. Was it before or after he changed his name to King that like Jalen Turner almost killed him? Yeah, I'm not really too sure, but yeah, he hasn't looked all that great ever since, and he's been getting done dirty, right? And he's on the opposite end of highlight reels ever since he changed his name to King Green, all right? Bobby Green, simply put, yeah, the fall off just not that great for him, right? At this point, people are questioning whether or not he should still be fighting because he's consistently getting finished in the most nasty ways possible, right? Got triangle armbar by Paddy Pimblett and got choked out unconscious. Got knocked out by Mauricio Ruppi with a wheel kick and got absolutely destroyed by Jalen Turner, where the referee wanted to see a live murder happen in a UFC ring. So Bobby Green, all right, change your name back. Maybe then you won't be losing your fights. But yeah, the name change to King Green a couple of years back is not helping you. So Bobby Green, yeah, you've kind of fallen off. All right, now up next we got Movsarevloyev. Now I don't really think that Movsarevloyev was popular to begin with, right? So I'm not gonna say he had a generational fall off or like anything like that, but the narrative around Movsarevloyev has quickly changed ever since Leroy Murphy got a KO over Aaron Pico because people were actually trying to push for a Mobs title shot. Hell, even I made a video about pushing about Mobs title shot, and that was like what 4 months ago. But after Leroy Murphy got his KO over Aaron Pico, however, nobody cares about Mobsar. Uh, despite him being like what the number one contender and having like an 18-0 undefeated record, nobody cares about Mobsar again. And I'm not gonna necessarily complain because I wasn't necessarily the biggest Mob Zaravoyev fan to begin with, but Mob Zaravoyev, how quickly the fan perception changes when Leroy Murphy gets a knockout and Mob Zaravoyev has yet to produce any sort of finish in the UFC. All right, now up next we got Shavkat Rakhmonov. Like Shavkat Rakhmonov hasn't really fought since December of 2024, and the fan perception around him is that he's just constantly injured. He's just not gonna get a UFC title shot because he never fights. Uh, there's a question as to whether or not he can beat the top level opposition because he had that boring performance against Ian Gary. I'm just gonna say this: all Shavkat Rakhmonov needs to do is fight somebody like in November or December, and if he fights them, like maybe like a Sean Brady or like a Bilal Muhammad, and Shavkat Rakhmonov, he just needs one y'all must have forgot type of performance, and he's gonna go out there and remind everyone why he was considered the boogeyman of the welterweight division. Now it's a big ask for Shavkat Rakhmonov to fight in the year of 2025, all right? But if he does, and he actually wins his fights against Bilal or like Sean Brady, even if it goes to a decision, as long as Shavkat can make it entertaining, I say that Shavkat Rakhmonov can make a generational comeback and be the next potential challenger for the welterweight title. All right, now up next we got Charles Oliveira. All right, Charles Oliveira has not looked the best in his career recently. All right, got flatlined by Ilya Zaboria. Lost to Arman Sarukian in the close fight. but still, he lost. I guess. I don't know. I'm still salty about that loss. But anyways, Charles Oliveira, although he's lost a couple of his fights recently, and he hasn't looked exactly the best against like Michael Chandler, which like you should be finishing Michael Chandler in like the first or second round. Charles Oliveira, people still love him. All right, people are still worried about him, and even if he loses to Rafael Fiziev, I don't think the fan perception necessarily changes. The only thing I say changes is like people's expectations for Charles Oliveira. But I still believe that Charles Oliveira is a beloved fighter. All right, everybody loves Charles Oliveira unless you're fucking MMA Joey and Kenny Okoye. And Charles Oliveira, like he can lose his like next three fights in a row. All right, we're just gonna say you should retire, but we still love you. So even if Charles Oliveira loses a lot of his fights, which I'm praying it doesn't happen, Charles Oliveira, in my eyes, in a lot of people's eyes, is still our Pookie Bear in the lightweight division. Right now, up next, we got Leon Edwards. Yeah, remember when Leon Edwards was a champion? Yeah, me neither. Leon Edwards went from being arguably top three pound for pound to how was this guy ever a champion in the first place, right? It was one thing to lose to Bilal because Bilal, like, he built like a 10, 11 fight win streak. He should have been like the next title challenger like a long time ago. And Leon Edwards, although he lost, he was like kind of in the fight, like especially in the fifth round, where like he was about to turn it up and like started elbowing the crap out of Bilal Muhammad and nearly finishing him. But then his fight with Sean Brady on short notice. Yeah, I don't know how Leon Edwards was able to stuff the takedowns Bilal from time to time. Yeah, it just didn't look good against Sean Brady. Like, Leon Edwards had 0 success against Sean Brady. I don't even know how that's possible. Like, I was expecting Sean Brady to win, but I didn't think it would be that one-sided because I'm thinking Leon Edwards has fought that style of opponent before, and even though he's lost to Bilal Muhammad, he's beat Colby Covington, which in hindsight isn't a great win. He's beat Kamaru Usman twice, and Kamaru Usman did come off the win against Joaquin Buckley. So I was thinking maybe he'll have some success against Sean Brady. No, turns out Leon Edwards, yeah, you're just not picking him to win a fight ever after that Sean Brady fight because he couldn't do anything in that fight. It was very sad to see. And Leon Edwards, yeah, he was like the arguably top three pound for pound in like 2023. And here we are in 2025, wondering if Leon Edwards will even be like top 10 level in 2025. So yeah, the generational fall off needs to be studied. And I don't know what to do with Leon Edwards at this point. All right, now up next we got Sean O'Malley. He has not looked all that great recently. All right, 2023, Sean O'Malley was propped up to be the next superstar. And in early 2024, people thought, oh, this guy's the guy to fight Ilya Taporia. But then he fought Marab on the Noche card, and a lot of his fans abandoned him because Sean O'Malley didn't look all that great in that fight. And then he fought Marab Davashvili again on UFC 316, and he got done worse. So Sean O'Malley, yeah, it's not looking good for Sean O'Malley right now. Will he come back? Hard to say because who do you even put Sean O'Malley up against? I can't really confidently pick Sean O'Malley in like certain matchups, especially against like grapplers, right? Like I don't think Sean O'Malley will beat Umar Nurmagomedov. And even in the rematch with Peter Yan, I don't think Sean O'Malley is going to do all that well. And the UFC are very protective of Sean O'Malley, so it's going to be very interesting to see who the UFC is going to give him because I can see the UFC giving Sean O'Malley like a complete bomb for some reason. And if the UFC does that though, then we'll know that he's completely fallen off because they don't think Sean O'Malley should be like what top 5 level. Because if the UFC actually believed that Sean O'Malley's still top 5 level, they wouldn't have given Sean O'Malley a complete bum. They would actually give him like elite level opposition, like a Corey Sandhagen or a Peter Yan or an Umar Nurmagomedov. So Sean O'Malley, It's gonna be interesting to see who he fights next, but I don't think he's gonna fight for a while, which isn't gonna help the fact that he's fallen off. And I don't know who the UFC is gonna give him. So I don't know. We'll just wait and see. But if he fights someone like really bad, then I might move him up to the generational fall off tier. All right, now up next we got Justin Gaethje. Yeah, Justin Gaethje. The fan perception of him has not looked all that great recently. Like, dude, he fought Rafael Fiziev on short notice, and he's on a one fight win streak right now. But ever since he started demanding for the title shot, a lot of the fans are not behind Justin Gaethje whatsoever. Like Justin Gaethje, he's a savage. People do want to see him, but at the same time, people don't want to see him get a free title shot against Islam Makhachev or Ilya Zaporia, where Justin Gaethje either gets flatlined in the first round or submitted in the first round. Yeah, people don't want to see Justin Gaethje unless he fights for a number one contenders fight, wins that fight, and then goes for a title shot. All right. Now, will that number one contenders fight really boost our confidence in Justin Gaethje, like potentially winning the belt? Not necessarily, but I don't know. At least he'll deserve it then, and people at least will support Justin Gaethje for a title shot. But the fact that Justin Gaethje right now, he's not really fighting unless it's for a title shot, and the fact that he's demanding a title shot, coming off a one win against Rafael Fiziev, it's just very disappointing. And he's not really gonna get that anytime soon because the UFC, quite frankly, just don't care about Justin Gaethje. Like they're trying to prop him up as like a sacrificial lamb because he's like 37 years old. And although the fans care about him, at the same time, we don't really want to see a Justin Gaethje title shot right now. And if he continues to lay off and not fight, then I don't think people really care to see a Justin Gaethje fight ever. All right, now up next we've got Bilal Muhammad. All right, Bilal Muhammad. Ever since he lost to Jack Della Maddalena, he's been getting clowned a lot on social media. All right. That being said, I still think Bilal Muhammad can make a comeback, all right, depending on who he fights. He can fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, and if he wins, he's right back in the title picture. If he fights Machado Gary, Bilal Muhammad will become the hero that the welterweight division needed because fucking Gary. And depending, it's all depends on who Bilal Muhammad fights that I can see him making a comeback. All right, if he fights someone like Kamar Usman, I can also see a comeback for Bilal. It just depends on whether or not he's gonna fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, and Kamaru Usman. And he keep in mind he has to win those one of those three fights. Because if he loses, yeah, the fall off is gonna be very steep. But I still give Bilal Muhammad a slight chance against any three of those opponents because he is the number one contender technically. Like he just came off the loss to Jack Della Maddalena, and Jack Della Maddalena is actually really good. So Bilal Muhammad, although he's fallen off ever since he's lost, I still think that with the right opponent, and if he wins, he can still make a comeback and vie for the title shot soon. Now up next, we got Alexander Volkanovski. Now I don't think Alexander Volkanovski's necessarily fallen off ever. It's just that his last couple of fights weren't going all that great for him. Got knocked out by Islam Makhachev. Got knocked out by Ilya Taporia right after. Overall, not the best times for Alexander Volkanovski and his fans. But then he came back against Diego Lopez. And to be fair, I picked Diego Lopez to beat Alexander Volkanovski. Silly me, Alexander Volkanovski, well, he's not in his prime. He's still that man, and he's still relevant in within the featherweight division. And people actually want to see Alexander Volkanovski defend his title more because now that Alexander Volkanovski is back to being the champion, now that Ilya Zaporia's left the division, people are actually excited for Alexander Volkanovski, and he's back to being relevant within the featherweight division. Right now, up next, we got Michel Pereira. Yeah, remember when people actually thought that he was gonna be like a legitimate contender? Yeah, me neither. because man, that loss to Anthony Hernandez really did a number on Michel Pereira's stock, and he hasn't looked good ever since. Right? He had that absolute mid off against Abus Magomedov, and then he proceeded to get knocked out by Kyle Dawkins in the first round on short notice. Yeah, I don't think Michel Pereira's ever gonna bounce back. Right? Like there was a time where Michel Pereira was on like a crazy run, and people were talking about, oh, if he wins against Anthony Hernandez, he might actually be top 10, maybe top 5. And people are gonna start putting Michel Pereira up against like the elite of the elite in the middleweight division. Yeah, that ain't happening anytime soon. Now it's 2025, and Michel Pereira has not won a fight in 2025. And overall, he's looked worse and worse after every single fight. So Michel Pereira, although he was fun, although people considered him like maybe like a potential prospect in the middleweight division, that time has passed because yeah, Michel Pereira has not been looking good in any of his fights recently. All right, now up next we got Amir Albazi. Yeah, remember when people actually thought that Amir Albazi was like top 5 level and he might have a chance against Brandon Moreno? Yeah, that was actually crazy because Amir Albazi, let's look at how he's even got to the top 5 of the flyweight division. He beat Kai Kara France in a robbery decision in 2023. He didn't fight for nearly a year and a half, and then got booked against Brandon Moreno for November of 2024. Got smoked by Brandon Moreno for 5 rounds straight. Then he pulled out of his fight against Tatsuro Taira, and he's still somehow the number 4 contender in the flyweight division. What has Amir Albazi done within like nearly 3 years for him to even deserve to be within the top 5 of the flyweight division? I don't know, but I think now people are seeing that Amir Albazi is a complete fraud, a complete bum, and he should be fed to the next big prospect. All right, there's no debate about it. Amir Albazi, there's just no stock or hype in him whatsoever. Like there was a time where people thought, oh, maybe he can get to the top, but yeah, that ain't happening anytime soon. So Amir Albazi, yeah, generational fall off. Actually, no, not as bad as these guys up here, but it's still a big fall off nonetheless. All right, now up next we got Michael Chandler. Yeah, Michael Chandler. Yeah, he hasn't looked all that great in his last couple of fights, and I think now people are starting to see his little shtick, and people are starting to get annoyed with him because rather than uh actually like trying to get fights against legitimate like prospects that deserve like a jump up in the rankings, Michael Chandler is sticking to fighting Charles Oliveira twice, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, all the established stars. And even when he's fighting down against lower level competition, he's fighting Paddy Pimblett, who has a massive following and is like a UFC like, I don't want to say industry plant, but like someone that the UFC heavily favors. So Michael Chandler, it's clear now he's kind of just there as like a sacrificial lamb. At this point, he's like what, 38 years old. He's not really training to like get better at mixed martial arts. He's just kind of training just to like uh show off his explosive workouts and stuff. Like he'll host like crazy bodybuilder workout routine just to get absolutely ragdoll for 5 rounds straight in his next fight. Right? People are getting sick of the shtick as well about him being like a righteous man, about him just like, you know, always on the high note. Because Michael Chandler in reality is a dirty cheat. And Michael Chandler, again, people just don't find him as a real person. And I think now that Michael Chandler's lost a bunch of his fights, it's only gonna get worse from him for here on out. All right, now up next we got Arman Sarukian. Now, if Arman Sarukian fights, then I still think he can make a comeback. The question is, will Arman Sarukian even take a fight? It's been a year and a half since Arman Sarukian's last fought. Like, where is Arman Sarukian? I have no idea. He pulled out of his fight with Islam Makhachev on January, and there has been no news about Arman Sarukian getting back in the octagon since, right? And bare minimum, we're gonna have to wait till December because Dana White did not make any announcements about Armin Sarukian when he was reading out all the fights from October to November. So minimum, we're gonna have to wait for him till December, and by then it's gonna be a year and 8 months. And I don't even know if Armin Sarukian's even gonna fight by then. Right? The UFC's not in any rush to get Armin Sarukian fights because Armin Sarukian also turned down a fight against Mateusz Gamrot. The fight that the UFC wanted to see because one, they wanted to see if Arman Sarukian uh can make 155. Two, the UFC thought that Arman Sarukian does need to kind of make it up to them for pulling out of UFC 311. And three, Matej Gamrot technically has a win over Arman Sarukian. So in the UFC's mind, they're like, let's run this fight back. And if Arman Sarukian wins this fight, then he's the definitive number one contender. The problem is he hasn't done any of that. So I don't know if Arman Sarukian can even make a comeback in the first place. All right. So as long as he fights, he can, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon. Last but not least, we got Carlos Prates. Now I thought that Carlos Prates was gonna fall off ever since he lost to Ian Gary. Because we all hate Ian Gary, and Carlos Prates did not fight all that well against Ian Gary. That being said, though, Carlos Prates came back and knocked out Jeff Neal in the first round, and now he's gonna fight Leon Edwards, who's on a generational fall off right now. So unless Carlos Prates loses to Leon Edwards, I say that Carlos Prates, his stock is rising back up, and if anything, it kind of proves that Ian Gary, although most of us hate him, he is elite level, so we're not gonna look that deep into that loss. So Carlos Prates, again, he's still relevant. He's probably going to knock out Leon Edwards, and his stock's going to be back up. And we are going to be like CP fans like me are going to be back to watching Carlos Prates. All right, that's going to be for today's video. Leave a comment down below if you guys generally agree with my list. And again, I'm not necessarily making fun of these fighters. It's just that a lot of these fighters uh lost a couple of fights, said some things maybe, or like just had iffy performances, and the narrative around them has slightly shifted. All right. But other than that, though, if you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so I don't have to work on my part-time job anymore. And with that being said, I'll see you guys later. Peace.